I had my grandmother. I had a farm of 5,000 rabbits, and and the wine farming.
Wait, sorry, rewind.
5,000 rabbits. Yeah. We had this. I mean,
What kind of farm?
I mean the huge farm for the for the rabbits.
Hello, welcome to List's podcast, The Guest. Each of these episodes features a different guest in conversation with someone who knows them. We're recording this episode after dinner with our friends in London, who have stayed on to listen to tonight's chat. To introduce myself first, I'm Naomi Smart. I'm the Commerce Director at British Vogue. And for anyone who is wondering what a Commerce Director is, well, my role is to oversee our shopping articles across fashion, beauty, interiors and travel on our website, our newsletter and in the magazine. And I'm basically that friend that you text 24/7 about where to find this, that and everything else in between, which actually Camille Cherrier, you're here today, texting me about paint colours at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, which in my working day is quite intense. This evening is an absolute pleasure to be joined by Julie Pelipas. Now, have I said that right?
No. Sorry.
We
so
tried.
Sorry to be honest.
Oh God,
it's
we
Pelipas.
did. We tried. Pelipas.
Right.
Julie Pelipas.
Right.
Arguably one of the most elegant stylists and tastemakers in our industry. To be honest, no one makes getting dressed look so effortless. I was actually so scared about what the hell I was going to wear tonight because you're always photographed at all of the shows and to just have the most amazing style in wear tailoring like no one else. So I definitely wasn't going to wear a suit. And I've come across you from when you worked at Vogue Ukraine and one of the fashion directors there. But most importantly now, you have recently launched your sustainably focused brand, Better. So you don't know this, but I was thinking back this morning when I first came across you, and it was actually 9 years ago. Which is crazy because I was working on a piece with Sarah Harris, British Vogue's fashion features director, on pregnancy style and women across the world.
Okay.
Do you remember?
Of course.
Yeah.
I have two kids, so I remember them.
Yeah.
But it was 12 years ago, to be.
Was it 12 years ago?
It was because Penelope is 11 years ago now. That means that it was 12 years ago.
Oh
yeah.
my God, have I been at Vogue for that long?
But it's good to keep it 9 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we're younger, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were looking for women who approached pregnancy dressing in a different way, and we found 3 women across the world, and you were one of them. And Sarah Harris was like, "Have you heard of this very, very chic fashion editor at Vogue Ukraine, Julie?" And I was like, "No." I looked at you. There was this picture of you just looking so effortless in what you were wearing, and obviously you weren't wearing any like inverted commas maternity wear. You were just wearing, I think, a lovely sweater.
A suit.
Yes, so yeah, you were, with kind of just like a little bit underneath your bum. In your house, is it in your house in Hydra?
It was in my house in Hydra. It was in Santorini, no?
You were in
Yeah.
somewhere very, very chic in Greece that was not
it was
in
Spetses.
Vogue House in London. And I was like, this woman has it sorted. You
Yeah,
looked
but
amazing.
there was a very nice story behind that because I met Alexandra Schulman in Spetses that night before, and she was literally sitting on the road, not even on the bench, on the road with messy hair, and no one would ever recognize her on the whole island. And I was stepping out the restaurant and I was like, because we were just launching Vogue Ukraine, and I was like a student. I was like, and I saw her in the middle of nowhere on that island, and I was like, literally all night I was thinking, is it her or it's my fantasy? And then the next morning I came out for the breakfast, and I was pregnant, and I wore this ancient Ukrainian traditional, vyshyvanka, but the very ancient. It was 100 years old vyshyvanka, which I wore all the time, and I was very messy in the morning, with my mother next to me. And Alexandra apparently was next to my table, and I was shocked, literally, of the coincidence. And I was so nervous, but I needed to speak to her because we were launching Vogue Ukraine, and I needed to ask her so many questions. And my mother was like, talk to her. And I was like, no, I'm too nervous. And I said, talk to her. She's watching you. She would, and there was like, and my mother pushed me actually, like, talk to her. And the thing is that there was the last hour of Alexandra's, she left in 2 hours the island. So it was the last chance to speak to her.
Wow,
and
so it was kind of fate.
It was a very, and she we had a very nice conversation. I took a lot of questions from there, and then she said, "Would you mind to take to contribute to this piece, the pregnancy style?"
So is that how,
that
is
was
that
the
how
moment
it came out?
how it came out in the end. So Sarah Harris contacted me later, but Alexandra, she discovered me on that island in Greece, and there was the only period in my life when I cut it myself shortly, like I was a boyish,
Yeah, you had the most amazing kind of pixie crop.
like very, yeah.
But that just goes to show that when you're a Vogue editor, even on holiday, you're always working. Like you're literally, she was already filling those pages with you in them.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, the story took so long, but
yeah, sorry, but it's so sweet. That's how, and then obviously I've just followed you, and as well as your however many over 200,000 people follow you on Instagram. So and myself, I am a real kind of fan of your taste and your style.
Thank you.
So anyway, I was going to get to the point of I'm very excited to finally be sitting here tonight with my Instagram friend from afar to chat minimalism 2.0, fashion design and sustainability. Welcome to the guest podcast, Julie Pelipas. Is that right? I'm like, can you say it for me?
Pelipas.
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 Pelipas. Yeah, sorry today.
But there's another story behind the surname.
Yes, you told me earlier.
It's too long story, but I would love to say thank you everyone for coming. It's a very unusual experience for me, and honestly, I quit Vogue 2 years ago, two and something years ago, and since then I was doing mostly on better. I was given a birth to my major project of my life, the better system, and honestly I didn't see much people on that period, of course due to lockdown, but honestly there was a decision to change the lifestyle into being isolated from from this hectic world into being honest and more dedicated to your true vision, to your true values. So cutting this long story, I'm very honored to see you here, and it's a huge moment. It's a highlight, I would say. For me to be here in London. I arrived just a couple hours ago, and I was flying in the plane, and I'm thinking how much it means to me, to be honest, to be talking to you, to have you in this dinner, to have you, Naomi, next to me, interviewing myself. It's a huge.
Oh God, we're literally only 5 minutes. Then we're going to start freaking crying.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold my tears, but anyways, I'm trying not to sound too pathetic. I hope you will enjoy this conversation. I hope you won't be bored, but you won't, because I came from another planet, from Ukraine. Honestly, it's really different from all the other worlds, and I hope through the questions of Naomi I will tell you this story more.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly.
Thank you.
It's so true though, and actually that's something that I've always, as a voyeur or a stalker, shall we say, looking at your Instagram and just think you've always seemed to have, like, every single pillar of your life, you seem to basically dance to your own beat. It looks like I don't know, you have an amazing lifestyle. You don't, obviously you take fashion seriously and your career choices seriously, but it's not everything to you. There's so much to your life that just seems very inspiring. So we'll get into that.
It's because I don't take anything seriously, to be honest. Honestly, I'm a kid. I'm a surfer. And my true self is that kid surfing on the surfboard. But that's the reason why I quitted easily Vogue and I launched this kit, which is extremely new reality to me. But let me hold on. We'll get
to that. Okay, so for anyone who's not familiar with you or your career trajectory, can you just explain a little bit how you got into fashion? And obviously we'll get into how you started better, but where did you kind of begin?
I just recently realized there's many beginnings of this story I could tell you, but then I was studying journalism and I came from publishing business, and somehow I found myself working on TV doing a culture program for almost 5 years. That was my first financial income in my life. But then on TV, as you know, people drinking alcohol a lot. They're quite mad. And I was so tired of that reality when people are always, drunk because they need to pull themselves far from the quite cruel reality they are informing people on the news, and and I decided, there was one day I completely decided, like, dramatically, that I'm quitting TV world into something else, and I never come back. So that moment I decided to publish my magazine, my own magazine. There was a dream, there was a big dream, and I was working hard for that. But then there were many circumstances that actually distract me from that dream, and it's a long story, honestly. I don't want to take too much time. But then there was a day when I was just I decided to try styling. And the other day, I found myself launching Harper's Bazaar in Ukraine, which was...
That's quite that's quite a major thing.
It is. And I was like, and I find myself a super lucky person, to be honest, because it's just happened to me. I never was an intern. I never was a personal assistant to anyone. It's just the moment I decided to style, I found myself a junior editor, but then in Harper's Bazaar Ukraine, and we were launching, and when you launch
because
things,
you were building something, so there may be the opportunities
from the scratch. Yeah, it's like you
bigger.
And the moment I remember clearly, that moment in Ukraine, there was no market at all. We were syndicated each little picture in the magazine. There was nothing from our production, and I was convincing my editor-in-chief to start this, and she was afraid, to be honest, to take that risk, because it takes a lot of budget from a little budget you have, and you're not sure, because there were no photographers, no stylists, no market, no production. And I said, okay, let me pay for this first shooting ever from my own money, and if it works out well, you will cover. And that's how we happened to shoot the first ever fashion editorial in Ukraine on the whole market. And that's how it happened. And I'm super proud of this, highlights, because we actually launched the evolution of market in Ukraine. So then I've got this position of senior fashion editor. And the next day, it's really funny. The next day, I turned out to know that I'm pregnant with Penelope, actually. And, I always knew that once I'm pregnant, I'm quitting this city jungle, and I'm going to a paradise to enjoy my maternity, to enjoy my pregnancy. So the next day, she appointed me as a senior fashion editor. I came to her and tell her, you know what? I'm leaving to Bali for 2 years. And she's like,
I told you, honestly, you got it made.
Yeah, I made it. And that was the best decision, honestly. I enjoyed my pregnancy a lot. I mean, there was Bali, it's a beautiful place to be. It's an island with a culture, with antiques, amazing antiques everywhere. I rented a house, an empty house, and I remember I bought on the antiques. There's a huge street for antiques, and I bought everything in my house from that street, and then I brought it to Ukraine afterwards. So it was the amazing experience. And Penelope was born in paradise, and she was born in a perfect...
she was born in Bali.
She was born in Bali. She spent 2 first years of her life in Bali. I came back when she was almost 2 years to Ukraine. And then there was Vogue launching in Ukraine, and they hired me, and I was launching Vogue as well. So it was another moment when I got pregnant again. It's funny because, I got pregnant when we were launching Vogue, so I was literally, but Peter was not that lucky, because my son Penelope got that all, but Peter, it was impossible to do that with Vogue, because, you have to be there 24 hours. So
I know. Well, I'm experiencing that now.
Yeah.
That juggle of going back to work 5 days a week with a 1-year-old or whatever. It's a lot.
And breastfeeding for 2.5 years also on the set, with no machines. Now they have these machines. No, that back those days we didn't have those machines. I needed to bring my kid on set. Sorry for that. You can.
No, I love that. That's brilliant. I'm like, oh God, is it going to go into like a kind of maternity podcast? Although I think there's actually a real market in that. There definitely is. So yeah, obviously you got into fashion in kind of quite an unconventional way, I guess, but also because, you know, it was a brand new market in your country. Did you get into fashion, I guess, for the same reasons that you're in it now? Do you feel like the industry has changed so much? I mean, you've been in the industry for what, how many years now?
20.
20. It's a very different place now than it was.
It is, yeah.
When you first started.
It is. But you know, that's, as I said from the beginning, Ukraine and me, myself, it's another planet. And I actually I realized, I'm sorry to say that, but my grandmother passed away recently. And because of that, I realized where it comes in me, this passion for tailoring, not for fashion. I'm not saying fashion. Fashion is bigger. Tailoring in particular, because apparently my grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, they were all tailors, professional. My mother can literally do her a trench coat within 3 hours.
Wow.
Literally. She's the best.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah, and I am the only one who couldn't make it technically. But I realized that I have it in my DNA. That's how, because I was born in the little city on the sea, where I didn't have any magazines, any TV, any culture landscape which could, you know, inspire me. I had my grandmother. I had a farm of 5,000 rabbits, and and the wine farming.
Wait, sorry, rewind.
5,000 rabbits. Yeah. We had this. I mean,
what kind of farm?
I mean, the huge farm for the rabbits. I mean, yeah, I was born in that little Ukrainian city with my grandmother. She's Asian Greek. She spoke to me in Asian Greek language, and it was a completely different world. Actually, I didn't see anything from fashion world back those days. I only saw my grandmother, who was always so elegant, so beautiful. She's like, I mean, if she would be in modern days, she would be a legend. I truly believe so. She's amazing. She's beautiful. She always would, she had this hair absolutely perfectly done, even when she was farming, She had these blouses and skirts and she was doing these clothes for herself, like, she will just go on the backyard and do this. I mean, not backyard, but anyways, it just was so natural.
And authentic,
so true. And I actually had I now realize that I had no chance to get in this world because no one ever took care for this girl. It was just a girl who was taking care of for rabbits, It's no one who will ever tell me, you need to get education, you need to read these books or whatever. So it was only my initial choice to get the education, to read those books, to get to Kiev, to the capital of Ukraine, to see how is it there, because it happened to me only when I was 14 years ago. And then I decided to be a journalist, and there was a bunch of decisions that brought me to this world of journalism in the first place, not in fashion world. It was a journalism. But then when I saw how dramatically dirty the political journalism, I decided I will never get into that one, because it's going to just break my test. I mean, I would just be depressed all my life. So I decided that there will be never politics in my life. It's going to be a culture. So that's why how I get to the TV doing this culture program, and it was quite a huge experience in my life. So, and then somehow there was just intuition that told me, you need to try styling, and I tried, and it worked out very well. And I believe that I'm super lucky person, to be honest, to find my true dedication, to find my true passion very early. I was 17,
That's so young.
Yeah, very young. And I remember I was shooting model tests every day because I really enjoyed that one. That was my first financial income. I loved to have those girls, like 13, 14 years girls, true, raw, with no experience, no posing. They were coming from these little cities from Ukraine, being extremely beautiful, and like with this weird backgrounds, and you see this through the lens, and you kind of build up something out of that. So that was my true passion. that's how I started actually. So there are many, as I said, many stories I can tell how I started, like from my grandmother, or maybe from the journalism, or maybe from that. But anyways, what I see, that I never took decisions from rational world. I never took decisions from my brain, but always from my heart, and still doing this. Still, as like when I was working for Vogue Ukraine, every cover I did, it was a fight, honestly, you know. Because the market is specific, the Condé Nast family is specific, and I always had my vision. I always believed that we need to build up our own language to speak about Ukraine, who we are, with the visual language to outward. And this is how people actually got to know Ukraine, through the Vogue Ukraine. And I truly believe
But that's also how that, you know, that's why I was so drawn to your work, because it was so authentic. It wasn't like
it was different.
It was completely different, and it was like your, you know, your view and your point of view was so authentic and natural that it was, you know, I naturally gravitated towards it. So, but from obviously working for Vogue Ukraine, and obviously now you have your own brand, you have your own like more sustainable brand, Better. How, like, was the idea, were you always hoping to have a more sustainable brand? Was that always part of your kind of career trajectory, or was it something that has just naturally kind of fallen into place over the last few years?
I think Better was born out of denial of this whole system, honestly, because working in Vogue, you feel literally with each cell of your body the essential of this industry, and you feel the pains of this industry. And I would say the whole path in Vogue Ukraine was marked with, from my side, it was a fight with the system. I was fighting with the publisher, with the editor-in-chief. I was always fighting for the covers, for the titles, for the cover lines, for everything, to speak the truth, to speak those things that really matters, not the things that we need to speak about it, because it's like it's boring to speak about those trends and pink dresses and flowers.
And to be on the same treadmill.
It's like, yeah, it's like
as everyone else.
It's like we're in this circle that we're repeatedly seeing the same things, and it's boring and has no sense. And from my side, honestly, I was so uncomfortable for the whole team the whole time, honestly. But what I'm proud of is that we managed to, through that fight, to come up to new matters, to new messages, you know, visual messages and others. So, but I was always uncomfortable in Vogue. I was always, you say, you saw me in the street style pictures. The true story behind that, I'm a very shy person. And the first years when I was...
I feel for you, because you step out of a car and you're being completely bombarded by photographers.
Yeah, and
that's really intimidating.
I felt so uncomfortable. I literally came to them and asked them not to take the photos of me, literally, because I'm too tall.
But when you look that chic, I mean, you're asking for, you know, your tailor, yeah.
So it was quite a different experience. I mean, I honestly asked them not to take pictures of me first, yes, but then I realized it makes no sense. They will do this, and so, but the thing is that how I came up to suits. Suits is the uniform that's like a shell that they cover me, and I feel comfortable, and I don't think how I look, and they can do this thousands of photos, and I will pretty much be sure that I'm okay in those photos. I will quite like that picture, but you know, but honestly, that's the true story behind the suits, how I managed to come to the suits, because it came out of this inconvenience, of this uncomfortable state of me, because I never found myself attractive or, you know.
That's interesting.
Confident.
So what, you basically felt like that your kind of suits were your armour in that respect?
Yeah. And it's this is the whole conversation about the suits. Actually, I can speak, you know, eternally.
So tell us a little bit about Better, and because from my understanding, the foundations of the brand obviously sustainable practices. That's at the forefront of everything that you do. But it's tailoring and it's suiting and it's upcycled suiting and things like that.
The thing is, Better is not, I would never call it sustainable brand. It's actually a tool that will heal the industry. Sustainability, it's how they legalize their actions these days. I don't like it, the term. It was spoiled by greenwashing or whatever. I find Better, it's not a brand, it's a system, it's a tool, it's a treatment to the whole industry, how we're gonna solve a huge problem. I never wanted to launch another brand, and I was literally asking myself, is it really this world needs this brand, need this system? And then the answer was yes, because I can bring the experience I have, the knowledges I have, the vision I have, as a tool that can recover the world. So Better is a system, first of all. I don't want to repeat those boring numbers of how much we overproduce and overconsume and all this stuff, but then we really need this. We really have this issue. It's a huge issue. And to build up a system that will be able to make new clothes out of those clothes that were considered as a waste, that's the goal. And I don't consider myself as a designer. I don't consider myself as a founder or whoever. I will be happy to step out, but I will be happy to witness a new system that was born as a major part, I would say, that's a dream, of this system that was, compromising themselves for that long. I really believe that we don't need to produce more clothes. If we are to produce more clothes, that should be a piece of art. That should be something worth producing. When I see those enormous amount of ugly, absolutely nonsense clothes,
literally just
everywhere. That clothes, the worst thing about those clothes, people who make them, they put no energy, no thoughts there. It's like it's not made for human beings. It's just made for money, and that's
revenue,
it. That's it. Stop. It's like
there's no love there. It's
nothing. Nothing. What we do, we take those clothes that were made, overproduced, and we put it in a smart system. What does it mean? In the first place, we consider all the body metrics. So we take body metrics from all the customers we have. So Better will be sold only to registered customers, actually. Through the new technologies that thanks God, available for us, you shoot the video and we got 73 metrics of your body, even considering the whites of your wrists. So it's like, it's enough.
So basically, you're not. So you're going to be making things that, you will not be wasting any materials because you'll already be measuring everyone exactly to their body type.
What we do, in the first place, we have the suit that's already done. We deconstruct it. We put it into pieces, right? Then we have you, a human being. Everyone has a different metrics. The sizing not exists. It's a huge problem for the market right now, and it's impossible to solve it because we're all super different. The length of the arm, the width of the hips, everything is different.
And it's mad that still in our industry the sizing is still so off on so many levels.
And it's the biggest challenge, right? And it's impossible to. It's actually the answer. The bitter answer is that it's impossible to standardize it, because we will remain different.
Yeah, of course.
And we need to actually invent a system that will satisfy these differences. So, and it's actually very easy when you break the pattern of the classic production and you invent from the zero the new one. And what we make, we take your metrics, we have these pieces of the pre-existed suit. and we adapt these pieces to your particular metrics. And we have, what I'm working particularly on, is to build up a system, a smart system, how we adapt these pieces into your metrics smartly. So in the end, you get the suit that fits you perfectly, you know, that is your new uniform, that you will wear it and you will be.
So tech is really
yours.
leading what you're doing now.
Yeah. This is custom made. It's like, yeah, this is something that big brands were working on for a long time, but it's impossible to integrate it into big scale of, you know, thousands pieces. It's impossible. It's just not possible at all. But when you have already a suit that is existing, or whatever, t-shirt, shirt, whatever, you break it into pieces. So you have small parts of it. And then you have a matrix. Then you can put it together, and in the end you have a perfect suit for you.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. I mean, talk to me through that. How do you find all of your suits? You're sourcing?
We source dead stocks.
All over the world, or?
By now, it's still that beta is in proof of concept stage. We're moving from proof of concept stage to serious life this February. You will see soon the new website and new life of beta, but it was experiments, a big experiment from my side. We did a lot of mistakes. We wasted a lot of time on you know, trying things, but now we're quite mature to get into this new stage, and now we're gonna hopefully work with bigger dead stocks and solve this global issue. Actually,
you know, we've obviously spoken about your style and your business, and looking at your Instagram, I've also seen that we're quite similar in terms of our references on architecture and design, and obviously that informs a lot of your kind of aesthetic. I saw you recently mentioned Peter Sumter and Jeffrey Bauer in Sri Lanka, and actually you just posted, and I feel sorry for anyone who's a very close friend of me, probably Julia Hobbs here tonight, Sir Edward James's incredible surrealist garden in Mexico, which I went to 6 years ago and literally have not stopped talking about since, because it was so incredible. But what is it about those specific designers or architects that you love? Is there a kind of common thread, or?
Honestly, it's a mystery of my life. I don't have words to explain that connection to them. I just believe that rhythm is everything. The proportions and the rhythm is the key to everything in this life, to architect, to art, to fashion, to food. I mean, there was a moment when I even wrote the scientific research on the proportions and the building up the rhythm in publishing. That's how we actually edit the magazine. It's also a rhythm. How you edit the book, it's a rhythm. How you build up a suit, a look, it's a rhythm. So architecture for me is like a top notch of this art of rhythm, you know. Jeffrey Bauer, for instance, he has this Kandalama hotel, heritage hotel, in the middle of jungle. And what is amazing about that architect masterpiece is that it's huge. He integrated that one into jungle. He didn't break a stone. He didn't break a tree. It was like literally, I don't know how he managed to do that. He was literally put this building, perfect building, into the mountain. So on one hand you see this raw, dramatic, very, you know, like wild mountain, and on the other hand here you see absolutely perfect play of lines, like the game of proportions. Any spot you take in that hotel, you see amazing game of, you know, suprematic lines. It's crazy. I mean, if I would choose another profession in my life, I would definitely go for architecture, and that's the passion. That's it. I have no rational explanation for that. I cannot bring you names on table, you know, and telling this is the ones that I'm following all my life. It's a very intuitional. That's how I actually built my house. I wanted to combine wood, concrete, and glass. And I live actually in Kyiv. I live in the middle of an island, and it's surrounded by river. That's how I surf every day.
I was going to say, because like, okay, so I obviously see like, well, as we all do, snippets of what seems like the most beautifully, I don't even want to say the word curated, because I think it is just your life. Like you have these incredible surfing videos of you. So explain that to me. You're like, so just so I can get that river, is it a river? Is it a lake? It's
a river. It's a Dnipro. It's like the river that's actually crossed the whole Ukraine. Is the widest river in the Europe, and I've got this jet board. You know.
No, I know. It's insane. That's the thing. You have this jet board. I'm like, you're in this suit. You're in this jet board. You're in this like beautiful like architectural wonder in the Ukraine. Like, yeah, there's
Jetbird is like I'm welcoming all my friends that come to Ukraine to try it out, and if you ever come to Kyiv, I will definitely suggest it to you because it's the most amazing experience to be. It's like it's when you pull out your kid. Jetboard brings you 60 kilometers per hour speed.
How fast?
60.
Okay, so you're going fast. You're
60.
going very fast.
It's very fast. It's crazy. And when it's flat in the morning, when it's completely flat, you got this, you know, I mean, it's amazing.
Do you go out every day?
No, unfortunately, but I would love to. But it's like I'm trying to do it as yoga. Once you have an opportunity, you get it, you do it, you know. It's the top priority thing to do, actually. You can shift everything in your schedule to do that in the summer.
Well, I was going to say, you look like you have, like, as I said before, when I first kind of came across you, like, you've got pillars in your life where you've just got it made. Like, you have your routine. In my head, looking at your Instagram, like, okay, she's up. Is she up at like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, on her surfboard, doing that? Then she's building her house, because obviously you've worked on this incredible house. You're doing your brand. You're bringing up 2 kids. I actually don't. I'm fascinated by. I'm reading a book at the moment called Daily Rituals: Women at Work, and it's, you know, from Barbara Hepworth to Virginia Woolf about what their daily rituals are. Like, what does your day actually look like? Like,
the key to this is to make whether yoga or surf in the beginning of the day. And if you do this, if you manage to do surf or yoga in the beginning, that means that the whole day will be like chick, 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 chick. Like, my day actually scheduled each minute. Like, I don't have breaks between Zooms, meetings, you know, I have like, but I need to have my 2 hours of yoga or surfing in the beginning of all this mess, because otherwise I would just be very...
At the beginning of your day?
Yeah, it's in the beginning of my day, yeah. If I didn't manage to make it in the beginning, I will do it in the end of the day, but the key is to make it every day, because if you don't, your body needs this, your
mind... You know
mind...
what, someone said that to me the other day, because I'm really bad at that. Like, I'm literally, I mean, today I was on Zooms from every half an hour from 10 until 5. Like,
then you do it at 8?
It's mad, but my friend was like, you know, you just need, if you start your Zoom at 10:30 and you do something in the morning, you'll still get all your shit done. Like, you just need to make that time in the morning. And it's actually that, it's the first time that something like that, it sounds so simple, but it actually really resonated on me.
When you go to bed?
When do I go to bed? God, it depends.
It really depends. The key is to go to bed with your kids.
What, at 6:30?
Oh, that's early. Why you make this to your kid? That's too early.
Is that too early?
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, night, bye. Love you, night.
No, it's 10. I do. 10
p.m.
Yeah.
What, Penelope and Peter go to bed at 10 p.m?
It's enough, no? Like, they wake up 8, then they have like 10 hours of sleep.
God, am I an awful mother? I just don't like, well, also she can't speak right now, so really, like, it's
wait for this.
Yeah, when she could start talking, of course, we could be partying until like 10 p.m, fine, but right now I'm like, bye, no night.
Yeah, but then if you go to bed earlier, that means that you will be able to wake up earlier with clear heads, and then you will be able to do that stuff. But I'm not that good. Sometimes I have days when I go to bed 5 a.m. when I'm doing, because for better I do everything. I do design, I do lookbook campaigns. I select photos, I edit them, I control each piece of post-production, and then I edit the layout of the website, the layout of Instagram. I do all that stuff. So sometimes I have those days when I go to bed 8 a.m. and then there is no yoga, it's just sleep.
Yeah,
so
I get it.
I'm not that perfect, and it's like it's okay to be not perfect.
No, totally. And also just to like when you can give yourself time, you do.
But the goal is to actually prioritize these things that make you, that refresh you, that make you sane, keep you sane.
That's a really good point.
Surf for me is the honestly, it's a huge invention of the human beings. Actually, it's something that brings you out of any depression, any broken situation to a very healthy state of mind. Because when you surf, I just did this in Sri Lanka in the ocean. When you surf, it's so complicated as hell. It's really complicated. So you need to focus all your cells, each cell of your brain, to make it, not to fail. And when you do this, you actually forget completely about anything else. Anything. Your brain is 100% into this. So when you finish, it works as a meditation.
I literally was about to say
meditation.
It sounds like my boyfriend did.
Yeah, it is. And then you just so clear. You're very clear. You kind of get rid of all the garbage from your mind, and this is the garbage in your mind is the biggest enemy to yourself, actually, because we are very toxic from the Instagram, from the workplace, from people, society, and news and politics, and etc. It's like, but to find these activities that clears your mind completely, this is very important. This keeps you sane, you know.
I actually feel like I haven't found that yet.
You need to.
I need to find it. I'm booking my flight to Ukraine on that paddleboard.
I'll be happy to introduce you to this.
In every episode of the podcast, we'll ask our guests to answer questions on their fashion love life. So for our final section tonight, I'm going to ask you about all of your fashion loves. So your first crush, can you remember the first piece of clothing that you really loved? I mean, was it a suit? I assume it was. Maybe
it
not.
was my grandfather's trousers that he bought in Leningrad.
That is really niche.
Do you want more modern?
No, I love that. But to be fair, actually, I think some of my grandmother's clothes were definitely the way that I got into fashion.
It was a fur coat of my mother that I cut into what's the West,
waistcoat. No, wait.
No. The Gillette, yeah.
Gillette, yeah.
West.
Yeah.
So I took the whole coat, fur coat, and I literally cut it this square thing, and I put it, and I made this color, and I put this over the white shirt with those trousers from my grandfather, and I came like this in school, and that was the moment when I realized that clothes is the language you speak to people, because I was very tall, ugly girl, and everyone was making jokes, and that moment I was a queen in my class.
How old were you?
I think it was 8th grade. Yeah, 8th grade. I
What's
don't
that?
remember.
Like
it's like
12?
10, 12, yeah, something like that.
Adorable.
My mother killed me for that afterwards. It was a waste of her fur coat. Complete.
Yeah, that's pretty naughty.
Literally just a square in the middle of her fur coat. It was crazy. I mean, I would kill my Penelope as well for that.
I always think this, like we've had fashion editors who've got teenage daughters we've got fashion editors obviously at Vogue who've had like an archive of Celine, and one of them came in one night and was like, actually I went to go bet my Celine shoes and the straps were completely broken off the top of them. It's like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, no, my daughter who's like 18 just took them out of her closet and went to Ibiza and trashed them. I was like, you need to honestly get a padlock on your wardrobe, because I'm worried that's going to happen with
impossible.
My Penelope. Does Penelope do that with your stuff?
It's just going to happen to you anyway.
But has she done that with you yet, your
Penelope
daughter?
did the worst. Penelope took my diamond ring to kindergarten and presented that to her friends. And thanks God that friend didn't recognize anything in that ring, and she put it in this, locker. And it was there for 2 months, and I was
2 months?
crazy. 2 months, yeah. It was my engagement ring, actually.
No, stop it.
Yeah, and I thought that it was like it disappeared, and I was like literally asking everyone in my family, "Where is it? You stole it from me." I was almost mad about that. And then the girl from
And they're literally doing show and tell at school, being like, "Look at this." That's amazing.
She just came and gave it to another girl. Can you imagine that? Just like, take it. Here, it's
well,
yours.
You know she's kind.
She's very kind.
She's very kind.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you've really wanted but you've missed out on because it's been sold out? Or things that have got away?
Yeah,
I always have that with furniture.
Yeah, that overall piece that Phoebe Philo wore, the black one.
Which one?
The black overall, the jumpsuit
God,
that she wore herself. And
But you know Sarah Harris has that, and it kills me every single time she wears it. I'm like,
yeah.
You can imagine Sarah Harris.
But he made it for Bottega recently, in the recent most.
No, I know, I've seen it. Yeah.
And I bought it, and it was. I was miscounting the size, and it's too big for me. And then I realized that it's still not the one that was made, by Phoebe.
But that's the thing. I've tried to buy that on the Real on Vestiaire, and I miss out every single time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I'm hunting for that piece.
Well, hun, you've got some competition.
I'm almost about to ask her. She's my neighbor in Idra. It's funny. It's the most fantastic.
Honestly, you lot who have houses in Hydra, am I saying it right? Hydra? I've been there, and actually it was the best holiday experience I think I will ever have. Only because we had 2 groups of friends. We took villas on each side, one in Kamimi and one on the other side. Oh. And we just literally did like, come dine with me every night. And we just had the best time, because also there's no cars.
No, absolutely another life.
I don't know if you've all been. It's like the most incredible island.
And can you imagine this summer? I'm having this, regular bathing with my kids, on this wild. There's many wild things, not this public beaches, but then, and then she came with her husband and kids, and I was literally.
You're like, where's the jumpsuit?
Frozen.
Give me that jumpsuit.
I was sitting, not even moving. And then Penelope, she's a good diver. She's diving, and she gets these shells out from the bottom. And she found this beautiful shell, and she's this intuitively came to Phoebe and presented this.
She was like, I know you're going to make a necklace out of this.
And then she came to me and said, your daughter give this beautiful present to me. And I couldn't speak. I was frozen, stoked.
Rather that than a diamond ring.
Yeah, she's always doing these things. That's the way she communicates with people.
Adorable.
It's somehow that. I don't know where it comes from.
Have you spoken to her about what her new ventures are? Phoebe,
No, to be honest, I was so careful with her, personal space. I never spoke to anything. We were speaking about diving, kids, Idra, donkeys, horses around, but never about anything that is related to fashion. And I felt like, once I speak about fashion, this peaceful and intimate conversation will be broken,
Yeah, I'm like that. To be fair, most of my conversations are anything but
fashion.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. What are you lusting over currently? What are you excited about currently? Are there any designers that you love, or apart from obviously, I kind of feel like actually your focus is so on what you're doing now. Are you looking at other things?
The problem with me, I was never looking around, and I mean, I like what guys from Bazaar do, honestly.
Bode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like what they do, because it's very honest. I find it's very beautiful, and it's a hand craft, and which I always respected a lot. And then. I'm honestly disappointed with the state of fashion right now, because nothing really exciting happens now, and I'm looking forward to see something beautiful, something amazing. But maybe it's us. Maybe we consume too much of information, and we don't feel this hunger anymore. I'm not sure. I don't know, but honestly, there's nothing that exciting anymore. So much excitement comes from arts, architects, you know, and tech somehow, but unfortunately not from fashion anymore. I really love to pick some vintage pieces and, you know, enjoy that art of how they put so much risks into what they were doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I actually think
Schiaparelli actually does crazy stuff right now. I'm not sure I will be able to wear this, but then, you know, but because I have my wedding coming this summer, and I'm considering I want to have one dress as a very crazy one. I don't know.
Have you started? Have you like? Where are you on that whole journey of like finding your dress, and or even if you are going to wear a dress?
There will be 5 dresses at least. You know?
Okay, perfect.
I want to change a lot, but
will you make your own? Do you think?
Of course, yeah. That would be a suit. That's for 100%. Yeah.
Amazing. And then one thing that I've been thinking about a lot actually since having a daughter is what, and actually in lockdown, obviously everyone was going through their wardrobes, trying to clear out and be a bit more minimal with everything, and what do you really need and what do you really love, and actually having a daughter has made me think, okay, well, maybe it's the hoarder mentality and maybe, oh, maybe I should keep that because Penelope might like it. But are there things that you're excited in your wardrobe to hand over to Penelope? Are there like
this Christopher Kane shirt I will keep for her, and there are many things like Comme des Garçons, Celine. I have a lot of Celine. I have many vintage, beautiful clothes that I will never give to resale. I will keep them for Penelope. That's for 100%. And I'm really, you know, I'm excited to see her being mature and appreciating these things, you know.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for flying into London to kind of see us and have dinner with us and chat with us and tell us all about the most exciting things that you're now focusing on.
There was absolute pleasure, to be honest. It was such a nice conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.